Hi, everybody. Susan Gerpick here. I going through things Mark owned. I want to show you a video where Mark is interviewed by Nancy Grace for, I guess, it's CNN. And I'll give you a little backstory on it as well as some of the other things I've written about Nancy Grace as well. So let me show you this video and then we'll talk about it in a minute.
Supernatural swindlers, psychics who con believers out of millions of dollars. Tonight, we blow the lid off.
If you've ever visited a psychic and wondered how on earth did they know that, a new book from Mark Edward claims that they didn't. A former psychic himself, Edward claims that psychics are nothing but a hoax, with mediums basing their so-called psychic knowledge on clues like body language, but many times on nothing at all.
Now to Mark Edward, the author of Psychic Blues, Confessions of a Conflicted Medium. Mark, mediums, psychics, fortune tellers, tarot card readers bilk the public out of millions of dollars a year. What are the most typical tricks of how do you trick the client?
Well, there's many different methods. They've been around for centuries. One of the main ones is called cold reading, which means you make a lot of bold statements as if they're facts, and you wait for one to stick, and then you just course correct and keep writing it out. So it's a,
Cold reading.
Cold
With
reading.
me is Mark Edwards, author of Psychic Blues. Mark, another thing is now very often people pay for psychic readings and mediums through their credit card. Once
Yes.
the psychic gets the credit card, they've got your name. They can look at your spending. They can see where you've spent money. They can find out where you live. They can go on your Facebook and see your family, your friends, your postings, what you did the day before. That gives them incredible leverage. What do you
Yes.
know about that, Mark Edward?
Well, I'll tell you right now, I have some information that there's a whole new platform. There are some financial interests, I can't mention names, who are planning on building a whole new platform based on internet readings, whereby the psychic will be looking like a Skype on their computer, talking to the sitter, and on the other half of the screen will be all their information scrolling by that they've obtained through the credit card, which is being used to pay for the reading. Yeah.
Bilking all of us out of millions. Mediums and psychics bilking you out of millions of dollars a year. With me, Mark Edward, author of a new book, Psychic Blues, Confessions of a Conflicted Medium. So, Mark, there's so many ways to bilk customers, consumers out of money. What about seances?
Well, seances, that's basically a magic show in the dark. Nowadays, a seance is done in full light on stage in an arena. It's changed quite a bit from the Victorian seance. What can you say?
Are they easy to manipulate?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There are so many tricks of the trade that have been around for decades.
Like what? What's a trick of the trade?
In a seance room?
Yes.
Well, in the seance room, it's pitch black, so it's pretty easy to get away with just about anything with the lights off. It's like the ghost hunters bumping around in the room with a flashlight. You know, turn the lights on. Turn the lights on, you'll be able to see what's going on. So, of course, the spirits work best in the dark is traditional. So,
With me,
That's fun, isn't it? So here's the story behind it. Mark did many different of these for Nancy Grace. I guess it was CNN. I don't really remember. But he'd be at work. That's why he's wearing his work shirt. He'd be at not like a tie and a jacket, which he would normally wear if he was going to be on TV, or at least something nicer than a work shirt. He'd be at work. He'd get a message. Can you be at downtown at 3 o'clock? We want to interview you. And he'd have to hustle because of course he's going to do that. So he'd zip across town. And the way it worked is he'd go into this studio. I'd never went with him, but he'd go into a studio and there would be, I kid you not, a smiley face, a round smiley face on the wall, just a smiley face. And you had to look right into the smiley face. There was no camera there. There was no Nancy Grace. There was no one asking him questions. It was a smiley face. And then he could hear the question. And he had to look right into the smiling face. Those yellow smiling faces. And that's how that worked. So he would do that. Now, Nancy Grace, oh my gosh. But she's asking questions rapid fire, and Mark is trying to think off the fly. And who knows why they call him up that day at the last minute almost, whereas not waiting for something, to plan. Maybe it was a day when there wasn't a lot going on, or somebody said, "Hey, psychics are in right now. Let's get somebody in. What's that guy's name?" So, you're trying to think on your feet. Several things in this that he talked about. Cold reading is obviously the most typical thing that you can say. Most people ask, how is it the psychics seem to work? And cold reading is definitely the go-to phrase that you talk about. And everybody who does this kind of stuff, like myself or Mark or other people in my community who explain cold reading, we all have different ways of explaining it. But that's the question I get the most often is, what is cold reading? And then a hot reading is a little more my specialty. But at the time that Mark recorded this, I don't know, maybe 2010, 2011, they didn't have, you notice he still used Skype. He was alluding to something James Randi had told him. I was there whenever James Randi told him this about using a credit card. You take the credit card and you give it to somebody to buy something. And then what they do is they had like a separate pocket and that had some kind of reader in it. And you just slip the card in really quick and the card would, and then give the credit card back to the person making the purchase. Now we do know about this kind of stuff. I believe they've found these little devices hooked into gas station things. It's a fake little area to put your credit card, and it's actually not the real credit card place you're supposed to be putting your credit card, which is great now that we use tapping. But the ability to get all the information off the credit card to see what you've been purchasing and things like that, as far as I know, no psychic has that ability to be able to do that. It was something going around at the time, and Randi had heard about it from somebody else. And then again, as I said, relayed it back to Mark, saying that psychics would be able to look and see when, your recent purchases. So we can't do that. But a psychic can get your name from a credit card and other information, possibly, where you bank and that kind of thing. But they're not using that for hot reading. And a psychic usually needs more than just your name to hot read you to some extent. If you have an unusual name, like my last name is unusual, Gerbic, that is a little more unusual. You might be able to get a good idea of who I am. If your last name is hyphenated, if you're a woman and you're hyphenated and the last names are unusual, then that's usually pretty easy to find out. But if your name is something common, no, nobody's going to Google you and get your information. But if you post on Facebook and then, or any social media actually, under your real name, and then reach out to a medium and book the reading under that name, then they can look at their list of friends or the people who've written on their social media. They can go back and they can see, this is the person who just booked a reading. It's probably this account right here. Now I can go ahead and hot read them from there. That's possible. Or what a lot of the stings I do is we get the information off of the Zoom screen, especially they're almost all women, and some of them have a nice last name that's Googleable. You can usually find them in a Facebook search really easily, really quickly, especially if they have been posting on the social media of the medium. You can find them. It's not that hard. But the more unusual names, the better. So people who are hot reading are usually going to look for people who have unusual names. Or the person, like Thomas John used to do, is he would say, I'm giving a reading session. I've got this event going on. Who's going to be there? And people would post on Facebook, I'll be there on Tuesday, or I'll be there at that show, or I'm not making this one, but I'll be at the other one that's held somewhere else on such and such day. And then he just has to click on that person's profile, and because they've given it up, they're sacrificing. Here's my very trusting, here's my Facebook account. So it doesn't matter what their name is. You could find out information that way. The other thing he said about, so hot reading isn't very common. And as I said, the credit card thing isn't really a deal, even though there was that video, that commercial came out. I can't think of what country it was for, about how your information is not secure. Remember where they go into a tent and there's a guru right there, and he starts telling you all about your past purchases and things, and then all of a sudden all the curtains fall and all those computer screens are there that show your credit cards and your Facebook and everything going on, and the person's stunned, and it's a commercial for security, for that kind of thing. So that kind of stuff isn't happening. All right. So it was great for a commercial. It's very interesting, and it should make you think about the information that you post online. Whereas I'm completely public with my information. I've given up. There's no way you can hide everything. So I don't think that you should close your accounts down and make it locked and all that. I just don't see any reason for that. I do think that you should be wary of what you put up. And if you are seeking out a medium, or there's some other kind of thing you're doing, keep in mind that people can look at that and they can maybe use it a way of infiltrating you. You don't want your ex, somebody that you don't want to have any contact with anymore. You don't need to have them know where you're going to be at certain locations if you don't have a great relationship with them. I mean, there's no reason for that. Or, so maybe you need a lockdown, but I wouldn't go to a great extent. So he's talking about seance. She asked him about seance, and seance was Mark's thing. I mean, he did the seance at the Magic Castle for years, the Houdini seance. And he's a mentalist after all. So I like how she says, so is there shenanigans going on? He's like, yeah, turn on the lights. But it's really hard to answer these questions as you're looking at a smiley face without knowing the questions in advance, which Mark didn't know. And, you're trying to come out with your clever, sum it up really quick when you got this lady practically shouting at you. So let's talk about Nancy Grace for a moment. So Nancy Grace went on to Tyler Henry, and I got a hold of the video, obviously, and I wrote an article about it. And the article I wrote is called Nancy Grace Should Be Ashamed of Herself. Here, let me show you what it looks like. So I wrote this for Skeptical Inquirer. Nancy Grace Should Be Ashamed of Herself. I wrote this April 20th, 2018. And it talks about how Mark used to go on the show and that kind of thing. There's Mark. Oh, he's so cute. And that she's this big, supposedly skeptic, and she knows the tricks and hot reading and cold reading and that kind of thing. And like I said, he'd been on her show many times. I'm only finding the one clip though. So Tyler Henry, oh my gosh, I got the video. I'm not going to show you the video. I'll put a link to the video that I made in the description underneath this, as well as this article. Here it is. So in this video, Tyler Henry knows darn well who she is. Whenever he walks in the door, he's like, Nancy Grace, and he gives her a big hug. And so everybody knows the story that Nancy Grace used to tell on and on and on and on about her fiance who died. He was murdered. And so that's just a thing. People know this story. And if you don't know the story, go to Nancy Grace's Wikipedia article and you can read about the story, and you can click on links to go more in depth about the story. So Tyler Henry, remember when you walk in the door and you go, oh my gosh, I'm here at Nancy Grace's house. Great. So let's get us all ready. Oh, give me a minute. I got to use the bathroom real quick. So you go into the bathroom, you do a quick Google of whoever it is you're reading, And within a few minutes, you really have enough information to be able to start off and do a hot reading and add some cold reading elements to it, and a lot of long pauses and careful editing of the video. Tyler Henry has a show. It's really simple, especially since he already knows who Nancy Grace is. Nobody's keeping him isolated from the moment he walks into the house to when he sits down and does the reading. That's not happening, of course. So, I mean, it's not a test. They want to keep their jobs. So they're going to make him look as good as possible. This is, like I said, there's no testing here. But Nancy Grace sits down with him, and she has a few objects, because, he likes to hold on to objects. And some of them were pretty obvious. And they were somebody very, very dear to her. One is her father, and another is a letter that her fiance had sent to her. Now, the thing about it is, and you'll see this in the article that I write, is that she says she's skeptical. And then she's like, you got to show me some good evidence. And then she goes off the rails, and the stuff he gives her weren't even the actual facts of her fiance's death. She just blindly goes along with it because, you know what? She wants to be, this is my opinion, she wants to be a star again. So Nancy Grace goes off of the TV. She's not a household name anymore. And Tyler Henry often does readings for people who are, let's just say, their star has faded. They're no longer in the view of like they were once before. And face it, these people want to be celebrities again, not only for the money, but because this is what they do. This is their job, and they probably still feel like they're talented enough to be able to do, music or TV or movies or plays or whatever. And they feel bad that time has passed and they're not getting the gigs anymore. So I think that on Tyler Henry's show, Hollywood Medium, it's very likely that some of these people caught on that he's giving readings to, but they just played along with it because they want to be on the show. If they come in and they say, no, none of that made any sense, or you got that all wrong, or you're obviously not talking to my dead fiance, well, they're not likely to be on the show, right? Nobody says you have to be on the Tyler Henry show just because we recorded it. They just go, oh, well, we messed up the audio that day and there's no good audio, and we'll get back to you. Don't call us, we'll call you or whatever. They just made a decision and didn't put that celebrity on if you're too skeptical, unless they could edit it in a way it makes it sound like you're suddenly, oh, well, I was skeptical, now I'm a true believer. And the thing is that when they filmed this, and you'll see this when you read my video, watch my video, or read this article that I'm going to put in the description, the camera crew shows the letter. It's brief. It's just very quick. They show the writing of the letter. And what I was able to do, because I'm watching a video, is just stop the video, make a screenshot, and then I had to flip the image because it was upside down, I think. And you can look and you can read the letter from her fiance. And what he's writing in that letter isn't what Tyler Henry says. And it was pretty obvious. I mean, he calls her by a name, and he alludes to an argument that they had, and none of that comes through. So Tyler kind of is just reading off what is popularly known about her fiance. And then, like I said, once you get into the details, it wasn't even close. So I don't know if Tyler Henry just went and read that Wikipedia article or whatever and missed it, or he just went off of his memory of what he knows about her fiance. But the point is, Nancy Grace should be ashamed of herself. She's doing these shows about critical thinking and how psychics bilk you out of money, and on and on and on. She knows what cold reading is, and she knows darn well what hot reading is. And she's a celebrity. So that was on TV for a very long time. So how is it that she can say Tyler Henry doesn't know who she is? He walked in the door and said, oh my gosh, it's Nancy Grace. So she's just doing it because she wants to be famous again. At least that's my opinion. I mean, that's the easiest thing to answer is why would she, when she supposedly knows of all these, what it is to be a psychic, what it's like, what's going on, that she would just completely bend over backwards and hug on Tyler Henry and, tell him how amazing he was and all that nonsense when it wasn't even an amazing meeting. They want to be on the trailer. They want to get the commercials. Oh, next on Hollywood Medium, it's Nancy Grace. And, get back into people's eyes again and hopefully maybe get gigs again. So anyway, I thought I'd share that with you, that Mark was the person in Hollywood that they would call on, or LA, they would call on whenever Nancy Grace needed as somebody who would explain psychics and stuff on camera. And what the experience is like, walking into the studio and you don't really have time to prepare. I think he had to cover up the logo on his shirt for his work because he had a real job, he was a magician, a mentalist. That doesn't pay the bills, and there's no insurance in that. Would definitely not say get into that industry unless you have a significant partner who's going to take care of your insurance, and so on. But please share. Nancy Grace really grated on me. I really couldn't watch her with her bless your heart mentality, and how dare they, how dare he do that? Just ugh. And I hear she's back. She's got a podcast. I think she's starting to come back and fame again. And just really irks me, her personality. But what do I know? The woman is making millions and is on national TV. And I've got my little YouTube channel where I'm always begging people to leave me comments, hit like, subscribe, and hit the alert bell whenever I upload a new video so you can know about it. I've made $100 a year on this YouTube channel. So I'm up to $200 now. There's no money in this, trust me, at least not in my world. So take care, everyone, and please like, subscribe, and leave me comments. I'd appreciate it. Thanks.